You're listening to Murder Curry, a true crime podcast where I will be telling you about strange crimes and stranger criminals. Hi, this is Tanay Modi bringing you third episode on Jollyamma Joseph. I'm no criminal psychologist, but it doesn't take a degree in the field to understand that there are three types of liars: liars, damned liars, and experts. And the worst part about this is that you won't be able to name one single expert. We all know who we are in this hierarchy, although one goes a step further in the chain and finds themselves using cards to build a house of lies. The reason for Pinocchio being this famous isn't just because it's a good bedtime story. It's actually about what follows after his lie. Of course, we all know the obvious, but what I'm talking about is the deeper meaning of it and how it separates us, the real us, from the character. Almost instantly, he experiences the repercussions of his actions. It's just him and the verdict of the moment. There's no saving the lie, no testifying, no piling up of more lies just to save that one lie. It's only him and his growing nose. Would you rather choose having the option of lying with an imminent vertigo down the path, or have an instantaneous verdict with nothing to follow? If he existed in real life, he would rather argue that spurting out a few more inches would actually be better. Slow down, I'm talking about what entails after getting caught lying. In fact, guilty or not, one would experience the massacre of their public image, the spin-offs of different versions of what they said, the unwanted assumptions or opinions of people on them, and may God have mercy if the memers catch a sniff. For months now, inspired from this case, trollers kept making cliched jokes on husbands being scared of their wives, and the case had gained so much traction that it is now a regional joke in Kerala to offer people mutton soup while calling them over to your house. Today's case walks around the lines of some sensitive parameters as the main accused shatters the perception of how complete is the delusion that virtuous is always goodness. Things come apart so easily when they have been held together with lies. Or so Jollyamma, the main perpetrator of the case, would agree, as the house of cards that she built with her alleged lies stumbled and knocked down. Her Rome, which she spent the last 17 years to build, fell in one day. Even the kids managed to slip in among the crowds of people as she was getting pulled into the police station and mocked her. Got some cyanide. Jolly always hated kids anyway, especially girls. I aborted girls twice and also once tried to kill off my young niece, she said smugly in her conversations with the police. But don't be too quick to judge Jolly just yet. Her case is like a hot potato for people like me and the media. Her story entails a movie-like plot as she uses deceit, manipulation, cunningness, political influence, and most shocking of them all, her image as her biggest weapon. She has been claimed a deranged person, a master manipulator, and also an enchantress. But the facts which remain constant is how a 47-year-old Jolly continues to be the main accused in poisoning 6 members of her own family in the span of 14 years, without even an iota of suspicion. I say allegedly because as you listen to this in the summer of 2020, the final sentence of the case has yet to hammer down in the court. I am only here as a medium to report to you on the findings of this case available on public domain and the court proceedings that have happened. The story kicks off in a small village in Kerala, where underneath the tall coconut trees and in God's own country, it must be a heavenly feeling to walk underneath the bluish skies of one of the most beautiful states of India. Small villages with long gaps of muddy roads between the interval of houses make most of the space and are surrounded by tropical undergrowth with a perpetual after-rain smell, which is the self-indulgence of many people. This far-awayness between the people is a trademark in most of these villages because most people would rather move to the cities. But don't mistake this feature of remoteness between people for an isolated community separated from each other or the outer world. In fact, these are the places that experience what having a tight bonded community feels like. The residents share, celebrate, pray, and automatically share a flattering trust between each other as a community. But of course, when Jolly revealed her web of lies, the people of Kudathai, where the events took place, realized how ill-conceived and misguided their trust in her was. The story of Jolly had escalated so much that people from across the country travelled to Kudathai, as the case got a national highlight. The village, which was once lost in its own chilling silence, was now filled with journalists, police, and an audience in every corner of the village. They knocked on every neighbor's door and lined up in front of her two-storied house to get a glance at her. In a way, Jolly had become bigger than her entire village. Unbelievable and beyond belief, expressed the residents of the village their thoughts on the case, with whom Jolly shared a special bond. She was an extremely devotional person, say the residents, as she never missed one single day of prayer and hosted many times in her home as well. She was talked about in her community as a friendly, helping, and a jovial person, someone who fit right into society and was an active social member for years. No matter what the social occasion, she would go out of her way to talk to people and was graceful at it. In the years, she became the clergywoman of the local church, where she herself led religious services many times. She indeed carried an aura which attracted people to trust her, and till many years before her arrest, she was the resident role model. She was believed to have been a lecturer in the esteemed NIT Calicut and had a successful image attached to her. She also had landed herself in the local school as the PTA president and also gave career guidance to 10th and 12th standard kids. No matter how much every person of her village wanted this whole case to be nothing more than just some misunderstood reality, they couldn't help but notice the pile of bodies on which the cyanide queen lay her throne on. As a child, Jolly was a well-behaved kid, say her brother. She was the fifth of 6 children born to the Josephs family. When Jolly was a young girl, her family made a comfortable living growing pepper on 2 acres of land near Kattapana town. They also operated 2 ration shops under the government's public distribution system and enjoyed a privileged and wealthy life. Her brother then conveyed, among us siblings, she was the only one no one fought with. As a child, she never said anything that would lead to a fight, nor did she create trouble for anyone. She was a pampered child and a very caring sister. While the seemingly sheltered childhood and the lavish life she lived before her marriage was what her brother said, there's contradictory narratives emerging from this early in her life as well. As the neighbors paint different pictures, they say that Josephs were stingy and would behave mean towards Jolly. Her brother, who takes pride in living a simple life as a farmer, says that he always found Jolly's lifestyle strange and extravagant, as she would want to eat meat every day and would desire for new clothes and cosmetics very often. Money, wealth, and power had surrounded her, but never embraced her, which maybe became the only thing Jolly had a hunger for in life. Jolly sought after humanities in her 11th and 12th, though she was the first in her family to be allowed to pursue higher studies by their father, as she was an extremely bright student. She was sent to a private college in Pala where she acquired a BCom degree. But like Kabir in YJHD and every teenager ever, she had tasted a slice of experiencing freedom and wanted to fly and make her own choices. And ergo, she convinced her family to enroll her in a college in Kattapana for MCom. But the difference this time was that Jolly not only dropped out, but lied to her family that she had indeed gotten her master's degree. And so the cycle of lies that paved an imminent path to her fame started. You will understand the importance of this only rather comparatively small lie later in the story. Moving on, it was around this time that Jolly met Roy. She went to Kudathai for the housewarming ceremony of their relative Manjadil Matthew, where she met Roy, and after their first meeting, they both spoke for hours on the phone, and as the sparks started flying, eventually they fell in love. The Thomases were the one who approached the Josephs for the marriage of Jolly with their eldest son, among 2 other kids. However, the same Manjadil Matthew, who was Roy's uncle, was against the wedding. He said with the reasoning that Roy was unemployed, although the narratives clashed when Roy told them he was employed and earned an abundant amount. Now, between the dilemma on who to believe, soon came to her lover's rescue Jolly, who also wished for an out from the clutches of her family, repeated the same story as Roy, and soon they both got married. Looking back, the Josephs think that they should have rather trusted Matthew and his warnings, as he tried to explain that Roy was only a class 10th pass out, who was lethargic, lazy, lacked an initiative or a drive in life, and lived off his father's earnings. But with the backing by Jolly, the Josephs gave in to the marriage and also guaranteed the Thomases a rather grand dowry of more than 2 lakhs and abundant gold, which for the 90s was a huge amount. Though conversely, Jolly's parents didn't hold back on the dowry too, because they believed that they were marrying her off by giving more than her share's worth, as in that time a draconian ideology was normally followed for daughters who were not considered of while distributing property among both genders of children. Although, as per the Indian Succession Act, the law advocates equal share in ancestral property for all children. But stuck between the conscious bitter truth of not getting any share in the family property and a constant desire for a wealthy lush life, a ripple of distress had created spite in Jolly. In 1997, the knots were tied and soon Jolly moved in with her in-laws in Kudathai. By most accounts, Roy and Jolly's marriage seemed to have been built on a bunch of lies. But what exactly went down between the couple, who apparently had each other's backs? Well, for the starters, both were unemployed. Secondly, both lied about having a proper qualification. But thirdly, when in 2001, the dominating mother-in-law, Annamma, retired, an unbalance got created in their finances. Annamma had full control of the house, and to retrieve their budget and to make use of her education, she now demanded a job from Jolly, who, if you remember, didn't have a proper degree and technically would have been exposed if she went for a job. And so Jolly decided to cook up a lie that she had to move to a neighboring town to complete a course which would enable her to take up a job of teaching. And so it is that the lies kept mounting like chairs which conveniently converged on top of each other. Jolly then requested money from her parents for the course and shifted to the town where after 6 months she lied that she had completed the course and had found a job there. But Jolly feared that her stack of chairs could be kicked any time by her formidable mother-in-law, and this became a crucial point for which she had to choose between the red pill and the blue pill. But Jolly, she chose a pill of her own choice, the one filled with poison. On August 22, 2002, as it was the time around Onam, Jolly used that as an excuse to come back to her in-laws' home, and with everyone lost in the celebration of the festival, she silently slipped some poison used for euthanizing animals into the mutton soup of Annamma and served it to her. Within minutes, the only person who had become a barricade between her and a reclining lifestyle fell down and soon collapsed. Jolly cried for help and yelled cardiac arrest, and everyone believed her reason, as Annamma was of an old age. After the incident, Jolly announced that she will be permanently coming back to take care of her in-laws, and in addition also claimed that she had procured herself a job in the NIT as a commerce lecturer. Her proud family members and the people in the neighborhood watched in admiration as every morning she would dress up as a respectable professor and would leave for her apparent work. She had even forged an NIT ID card and put up stickers of her college on her vehicle as well. It is reported that she instead used to go to a beauty parlor where, using her charm, she had acquired a few friends and had started to work there. However, if she had gotten a profound job, then why were there financial problems still building on? She planned elaborately, thought of solutions to her problems, and decided that her next target would be father-in-law Tom Thomas, for whom Jolly had prepared tapioca cooked in cyanide. Tom immediately fell on the ground on August 26, 2008 after eating the tapioca. This time too, she yelled cardiac arrest as she called for help. But she had a more sentimentally plausible explanation of a miserable old guy who never got over his wife's death. And so everyone believed her this time as well. Her alleged strategy was that she wanted to acquire all of Tom's property and belongings in her name. And to do that, she had to strike out both of Roy's siblings from the share. She had invested generously in a local politician's business, and so he agreed to help Jolly forge a fake will under Tom's name. Well, you know what they say, where there's a will, there's a way. On the day of the funeral, Roy and Jolly presented the will of Tom, and expectedly, Roy's siblings expressed their discomfort, but they were scoffed at as someone outraged by the decision. A leopard cannot change its spots, and a lion can only be trained but not tamed. 30th September 2011 was a sunny and humid day. Jolly had somewhat cooled down from her past two killing frenzies, but just when Kudathai breathed normalcy, another man dies in the same house. It's Roy Thomas, husband of Jollyamma. The couple had been married for the last 14 years. But this time, again, another marriage was cut short by a murder. According to the report, when Jollyamma was asked at that time about this, she claimed that while she was in the kitchen making omelettes, she heard Roy collapse in the bathroom, and in concern, she rushed to check on her husband. As she found the door locked from the inside, she cried for help. The neighbors came and broke the door, only to see Roy on the ground foaming from his mouth. Though still shocked, the neighbors took him to the hospital, but he was declared dead. And the explanation this time too by Jolly was cardiac arrest. But I wonder if, according to the police, all that is said and done by Jolly is true, what would have she done after committing this? Would she have sat at the dining table looking at her two kids, thinking she was doing it all for them? Or to satisfy herself? Or was it from the impulse of getting rid of her husband as she had an extramarital affair going on? MS Matthew, not to be confused with Manjidil Matthew, was another heartthrob of Jolly. The reports say that he was the one who supplied the cyanide to Jolly. Matthew was a cousin of Roy, but also shared a close friendship with him, as he would regularly come over to his house and they would drink the nights away. But to Roy's shock, he slowly witnessed that Matthew was growing closer to Jolly than him, which came to a point when he realized that Jolly and Matthew would sleep together in his own home. To make it more grave, this had been going on since 2005. According to the report, one day while sharing an intimate moment with Matthew, Jolly portrayed her plan to kill Roy and asked to arrange cyanide for her. Matthew, who had worked in the jewelry industry previously, asked a close friend Prajikumar, who owned a jewelry shop, to acquire some cyanide as it is used to clean jewelry, and further conveyed the plan to him. And in return of 5,000 rupees and 2 bottles of alcohol, the exchange of cyanide was done between the two. Well, unless they were speaking a code language, both Matthew and Prajikumar have denied these claims, saying that they thought the poison was to kill a rat. A weak and lethargic Roy had no other option at that time than to sulk at his inability, and gave himself in to occult practices, dark magic, and the sweet refuge of heartbroken men, alcohol. However, to get his alcohol, he had to depend on Matthew, and so you can connect the dots. It seemed that Jolly were to stop at nothing, As the ultimate femme fatale who attracted men with her charm and mystery, near perfectly executed a double life. Playing a character and motivating others with her apparent accomplishments, she made people gracefully wonder how she remained so stable and strong even after her husband's death. When suddenly Jolly started to live more lavishly, shifting to a car from her two-wheeler, everybody rather admired her without realizing that actually she now forged more documents to take over every asset the Thomases had. However, between all this, Jolly now had to come up with another cyanide-infused strategy, because just on the day of Roy's death, Munjadil Matthew registered an FIR under suspicion of unnatural death, as he thought that how can cardiac arrest be this persistent in his brother's wife, brother, and now his nephew too? The police did a post-mortem on the body, and to their shock, they found traces of cyanide in him that emerged from rice and curry he had eaten. Quickly, they inquisitioned Jolly, who now fittingly changed her story from heart attack to suicide. She explained to the police that Roy's financial difficulties and his proneness to alcohol must have pushed him to take his own life. And just like that, she convinced them that he himself consumed the cyanide, and in addition also requested that the report be hushed so as to not harm her image. Though a question that was left hanging was that if Jolly said she was still preparing omelets for Roy, then when did he consume the cooked food in which they found the residue of cyanide on? Well, the question "Rasode mein kaun tha" yet again remained unsolved. Never once did Jolly let anyone throw dirt on her image she had worked so hard to maintain. She was still the person loved and adored by everyone. So, did Munjadil Matthew file the FIR in concern of Jolly or in suspicion? Or did he just sense some foul play going on somewhere? We would never know the answer to that, as it died with him on February 2, 2014. When the relative came to Jolly's now lawful house, supposedly he expressed how unsatisfied he was with the police's verdict. Not knowing that he was almost pulling the trigger on himself, he went on about how this might be a conspiracy. Feeling her stack of lies now more shaky than ever, maybe she had planned it already or the moment now called for it, but she put cyanide in Matthew's drink, and this time too a death was reasoned as cardiac arrest. What shocks me the most about this story is not the murders. It's the consistency. The whole world agrees that being consistent is the toughest thing you can achieve, and Jolly executed that skill effortlessly. But in the context of always being around opportune moments to add more tragedies onto the pile of already existing ones. 3 months after the death of Matthew, on May 5, 2014, another tragedy took place. During the ceremony of Shaju's elder kid, in front of the whole gathering in the church, Alpine Shaju, his younger sister, aged 1.5, mysteriously collapsed after choking on breadcrumbs and mutton curry. The police found a few things insinuating about this incident. Firstly, there were traces of cyanide found in the body. Secondly, Jollyamma was in the gathering. These two facts sound like an uncharitable assertion on her, if it weren't for the fact that Shaju and Jolly are married as of now, with Shaju's wife of that time also dead by cyanide. Pure coincidence or an elaborate plan? At the time of the ceremony incident, of course, no one could explain how this could happen. The mother, silly Shaju, was in grief and Jollyamma gave her a shoulder to cry on. When you sit face to face with someone who is pleasant, respectful and polite, you have a hard time reminding yourself that nothing they say may be true, that nothing may be sincere. Maintaining non-belief requires a tremendous effort. With Jolly's growing interest in Silly, they started to spend more and more time together, and Jolly would many times accompany her and Shaju to places. But then, after his wife's death in 2016, Jolly gave Shaju a shoulder to cry on, and within a year, they married. That's too what everybody thought, until much later the accusation came up that Jolly and Shaju had shared an illicit relationship since before Shaju's daughter's birth. But more shockingly, When Shaju was asked about his involvement in the case, he confessed to the media that he knew that his wife and daughter were in danger if he were to stay with Jolly, but whatever spell had bound him to Jolly, he consciously chose to stay. Shaju was another cousin of Roy, who had a good job and was financially stable. Allegedly, this is what attracted Jolly to come on to Shaju, and since Roy's death, she decided to set her crosshairs on Shaju's wife and children to get him all for herself. The funeral of Silly was somewhat a spectacle for many family members because reportedly Jolly didn't seem that grieving for her friend, and strangely her and Shaju got down on their knees and together kissed the cheek of Silly's body. But it all made sense a year later when they married. Someone who fears God is careful about their integrity and judgment all the time, while a person who fears punishment of the state is careful only when there is a likelihood of being caught and punished. Not that she wasn't careful, but when these many skeletons tumble out of the closet, you can't help but feel a little hunch of discomfort. And just with this discomfort and suspicion, Roy's siblings started digging around. They found some concerning evidence immediately, but the main problem was to get the police to corroborate them too. Firstly, they found that the post-mortem report of 2012 on Roy's body was a little questionable. Adding on to the suspicious omelette story of Jolly, they questioned that if he did commit suicide, then where did he get the cyanide from? Secondly, they realized that the will presented to them before now consisted of additional signatures, directly implying that the will was being forged. They didn't want to suspect Jolly heedlessly, but she was indeed present in many incidents with the victim dying unexpectedly from mysterious illnesses. But the nail was hammered down on her when they got to know that Jolly's qualifications were lies, and whatever she claimed about her job was all a hoax. A couple of weeks later, they questioned Jolly about this, and she heavily opposed the idea to pursue this further, and also gave them some share of the property and appealed to lay off the matter. But Roy's siblings anyway put a plea in March 2019 that Roy's body be exhumed for further examination, and asked the police to investigate into Jolly. And just like that, a Pandora's box of lies, death, and more cyanide opened. The police then began to exhume all the other bodies from the incidents they found suspicious, and when the reports came back from the bodies, they immediately found a common link: Jolly and cyanide. Her neighbors used to say that, quite in a helpless voice, she would occasionally hint to everyone that the house was a curse. Of course, who wouldn't believe the accomplished, down-to-earth woman who lived just around the corner and imagined her to be capable of allegedly doing something this grave? Jolly was taken into custody on October 5th, 2019, and saw a crowd of people waiting outside her house to get a glance of her. But quite in an unexpected twist, on October 10th when she was interrogated, she confessed, right then and there. She confessed to killing all the 6 people, to having the affairs, that she tried to kill Annamma twice before her 3rd successful try, among some other people on the list as well. She confessed to being in another illicit relationship while with Shaju and was planning to eventually get rid of him too and marry this other person. Many believed that she knew the damage had been done, and to remove any loopholes that could weaken the case, she confessed to the crimes. It might be that she had been acting out a planned drama, as she was posing as a mentally distressed person by whimpering and talking to herself at times during the interrogation. However, she is in fact mentally fit. The key evidence mainly was based on charges of cheating the government, as they found the forged will, the fake academic mark sheets, and fake certificates of degrees. But when the police found 2 bottles of unauthorized cyanide tucked away in the attic, for which she herself handed it to them, she even confessed that she had kept the rest of the cyanide safely in case the police came to arrest her. But it was evidently too late for that. Since her arrest, Jolly has been in police custody and is still now awaiting the trial date. She has applied for bail thrice now, but the appeal was refused under the suspicion that she might do something to foil the case. In the February of 2020, she even attempted suicide by biting into her own wrist and then rubbing the wound on a tile. Even inside her cell, all alone, she doesn't miss the chance for one more tragedy. Even though all the evidence, the investigation, and the information produced by the police is all viable in the court, it all depends on whether Jollyamma stands by her confession in the court or not. Of course, there still exists a possibility that she might not stick to her words and that the trial could fail to establish guilt, for which the court would have to make a suitable decision. But of course, we won't know until then. If all the world's a stage and all the women and men are merely players, don't concentrate on just one hand of a player. Keep a check on the other hand. You might just buy enough time to prepare for what's going to hit you. After learning about the case, you might just need a drink, right? So what's your choice of poison? Well, that's all I have for today, and until the next case, farewell.